Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, Continuous Penetration Testing, Closing the Gaps Between Threat and Response, sponsored by Sprocket Security. My name is Carol Auth of SANS. Today's featured speakers are Chris Dale, SANS Certified Instructor, and Casey Camilleri, CEO and founder of Sprocket Security. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenters, please enter them into the Q&A window at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to our presenters.
Thank you very much, Carol. Hello, everybody. So nice to see people joining in on this so important topic, continuous pen testing. And as you said, you can put your questions into the chat box, the Q&A box. But I got a question for you, everybody. Look, what's the purpose of pen testing? Why are we doing penetration testing? Pretty basic question, don't you think? Is it to verify if hackers can break into an application? Is that why we do pen testing? To kind of like get that confirmation, that seal of approval? Is it to verify if an attacker or a hacker can get into the, not just application, but the organization? Is that why we do pen testing? Or is it not to see if hackers can cause some damage now, in the future? Basically, are we good enough to withstand the continuous threats that we're seeing on the internet? Or have we turned this pen test ordeal into some boring, compliance-driven commodity that anybody can do? Run some scanners and tools. That's all you do, right? I mean, look at Norway, where I'm from. There's like 55 plus different companies in Norway that can all do pen testing. And I'm sure they're all superb at what they do, right? Well, not necessarily. Why we do pen testing? Fundamental question. The thing is, we have this idea that offense must inform defense. If our constituents, if our customers are building defenses willy-nilly, left and right, without understanding where to actually architect their defenses, then they're gonna fail. You gotta learn from the offense. Let me give you an analogy. Soccer, for example, football, right? That's what we call it in Europe. Imagine that the defense is constantly in advance of a match, studying how Messi or Ronaldo is gonna strike, how they're gonna dribble the ball, how they're gonna go in the offense. And by studying the offense, we can better architect our defenses. That's a good idea. In fact, IT and defenses greatly benefit from learning how the offense can break in. And if you look at IT, it is anything but static. Everybody, we are no longer in the 1990s, early 2000s, where your websites would say shoveling, website development in progress. You know, that's in the old days. Everything nowadays is happening at lightning speeds. We're seeing deployments after deployments. We're seeing new releases and changes to IT happening constantly. New firewall rules, not just from your own IT team, but from third-party IT teams and so on, exposing new applications, new software, new data is published. There's constantly movement out there. Customers want this. And security says no? What's going to happen if security stops our go-to-market endeavors? Do we want security to be like the no department that holds the organization back? No. However, if cybersecurity says no, because we got a pen test, we got a plan, we got a release, we got to do all of this planning, then we're going to have more and more shadow IT, and we're going to have more and more IT that breaks the rules. New features and capabilities, we want to be in a go-to-market situation, and we got to live with that. Cybersecurity can't say no. We got to join the stream and be with the organization and still prevent ourselves from getting hacked. So IT, for sure, changes all the time. And if you look at the threat landscape, oh boy, Is it always in change too? The threat landscape. Look at DEF CON, the conference where hackers come together to talk about the latest and coolest hacking techniques. Look at Black Hat. Look at new ways that hackers break in. Look, the threat landscape is also constantly moving. There are new credentials being exposed on the dark web all of a sudden. There is malware on somebody's laptop, and that info stealer on that laptop will leak new credentials out to the threat actors. There's new advisories and proof of concepts being built for old advisories that make it all of a sudden possible for us to hack and demonstrate risk. Attackers basically are not static. They're not point in time. They're constantly evolving, figuring out new clever ways of breaking in. So yeah, back to that question, what's the purpose of pen testing? Look at what the threat actors are up against. These are what we're up against, right? I just nabbed this little screenshot from one of the biggest players in cybersecurity. They're saying that attackers, they scan the entire internet for vulnerabilities within 45 minutes of some new advisory. 45 minutes. We're not talking weeks, months, etc. We're talking minutes until attackers are knocking on your door. And to be honest with all of you, they don't even need to scan the entire internet for vulnerabilities because there's already people scanning. Services like Shodan, for example, will be already scanning your assets and exposing all of your vulnerabilities and exposures to the entire world today for anybody to go in and grab. Now, should you be so unlucky to actually get hacked, well, then another screenshot from another big vendor out there, you're in bad luck because on average, this vendor is saying that cyber criminals out to monetize you, so e-crime, they have a breakout time of as little as 48 minutes average. Now, what's the breakout time? Basically, it means that from the time it takes from when you got hacked until the attackers have moved into another system is at a record low of 48 minutes average, where some of the fastest threat actors are measured in seconds, not even minutes. So this is what we're up against, okay? So seems kind of dire, I agree. The thing is, everything has developed into agile. We got DevOps these days where we're constantly shipping. We got everything basically moving fast, even the threat actors. But we, the pen testers, we've been static. And I don't have to look far to find how pen testers can operate. If I look at, for example, here, we got our friend Rob Joyce from the NSA over in the USA, perhaps one of the most revered hacking organizations in the world. This guy is the boss of all of the hackers in the USA's NSA organization, okay? And he's on stage here on a YouTube video talking about how to protect yourselves from nation state attackers like the NSA. And he has many great points to share with us, the audience. And one of his points is that it's not a matter of fact how advanced the NSA is. They're pretty advanced. But you know what? They don't even need to use their zero-day exploits. They don't need to be advanced because all it takes is persistence and focus. That's going to get you in. That's what he's talking about. Persistence and focus in APT, advanced persistent threat, which the NSA is. The P is the most important character, not advanced. Sorry to break it to you, but if you're just always on pen testing, you're most likely going to find a vulnerability that's going to let you in eventually. Persistence wins the game, not how advanced you are. So where do we begin? Let's take a look at some age-old wisdom. Let's quote Mr. Sun Tzu himself, an ancient Chinese war general who has some clever, call them tips and tricks, if you will, about how to defend yourselves, how to win wars, and so on. And what he begins with is saying, know yourself, know your enemy, and you shall not fear the results of 100 battles. That's what he is telling us, that you need to know yourself, know your enemy, and by doing so, you don't have to fear the fight. You're going to win. So where do we start? We start by knowing ourselves, okay? That's what we start with. How do we learn about who we are? Well, we call it attack surface management. Okay, we basically utilize clever hacking techniques, reconnaissance techniques, scanning and discovery, enumeration, and so on. And we start to build out asset inventory. We start to understand, what does the target organization expose? And mind you, this can be complemented by the blue team. This is not just a red team pen tester type of exercise. This is also something the defense can build upon and help us to create a joint understanding of what assets we have out there. And then, inspired by military again, we start to go through loops of reconnaissance. We start to capture information to discover changes to the attack surface. Open ports, new cyber threat intelligence, new attack surface, which we need to analyze. And as changes emerge, we have to apply the opportunity to ask ourselves, can we hack this target based on this new change? And if you can, come up with a plan so that the customers can patch in time, okay? So the customers can react and prevent other threat actors from completing that loop of capture, analyze, plan, and act. We need to fight back, and we need to do it rapidly. We need to ensure that the attacker's loops of capture, analysis, and plan and act, we need to make sure that we can fight those fights and win the fights that are going on a daily basis here. Then it's all about knowing your enemy. And this is what pen testers do. This is our profession. We understand threat actors. That's what we do. We're hackers. So what kind of tactics, techniques, and procedures is out there to allow us to break in and target on the available attack surface? That's bullseye, exactly what I want my teams to be razor sharp on. And if we look at, for example, Mitra attack, you can see that there's all kinds of clever techniques regarding reconnaissance, initial access, execution of code, etc. And attackers, they can use any one of these techniques here to break in, and this is what you would expect a pen tester to support you with. In fact, this whole list of tactics from Mitra here, list of techniques and procedures, is what we call a kill chain of tactics, techniques, and procedures that attackers might use towards you. And our pen testing teams that we're talking about here needs to know this inside and out. So many defenders and organizations wrongly assume that once you got hacked, it's game over. But no, it is not game over when you get hacked. It's game over when the attackers move all the way to the right side of this kill chain here, where we see impact. When the attackers attain impact, when they not just ransom your files, but make you pay for your files, that's when you lost. And if we can stop the attackers in any one of these steps until we get to the impact, we win the fight. They lose. They don't achieve the impact. In other words, we win. And pen testers can help here. In fact, this is where we want to bring agile into security and into pen testing. We want to turn penetration testing into a continuous endeavor. Instead of just saying, hey, let's test these TTPs, say once a year, twice a year, nowadays our customers are asking for a pen test throughout the year. They're asking for not just somebody to test what is current right now, 2025, October, but they're asking us to test what is current tomorrow and the day after and the day after. If you ask me, in fact, pen testing in the traditional sense is kind of like this old dinosaur here. It's old, it's slow moving. It does provide value. In fact, we find vulnerabilities in the classic traditional pen test all the time. However, real threat actors or agile little bunnies running circles around our legs, trying to figure out any way for them to figure out if there's a way in, not just once, twice a year, but continuously. So, as Casey will talk about here soon, this is what we're building out. We're basically operationalizing pen testing so that our customers can have an APT, so they can have hacker best friends always on the lookout, making sure that we can patch and fix the vulnerabilities before the real threat actors are going to find them and exploit them. So let me check if there's any questions. There is a white paper associated with this talk here. I encourage you all to go out, follow the link that Alec posted on the chat here, read the white paper, go explore Sprocket security and see what is this all about. It is really a game changer when it comes down to a complete necessity, attack surface management. You need asset inventory, okay? And you don't want to build it yourselves. Let hackers complement your asset inventory by showing you what they find when they scan and they do reconnaissance. Basically, it's a given. You want to find your shadow IT and so on. And then check out basically how we can start to validate TTPs and how we can start to check and ensure that your changes, the things that we find, are not going to introduce risk to your organization. It's not longer a once a year activity, customers demanding more. It is now a throughout the year type of activity. And that's a net sum positive. All right, I want to give it to Casey here next. I don't see any questions popping up on a Q&A. It's been a pleasure to talk to you on this very quick 20-minute talk. You're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn, etc. Casey, are you on?
I'm here.
Yeah? What's your initial thoughts on this?
Oh, spot on, Chris. It's actually really great to hear someone have all the talking points absolutely spot on and be so in touch with the industry and where it's going.
And this is not something only the nation states can do. This is actually a capability that we've been building now. And this is something that companies are actually providing out there to help ensure that we don't just do pen testing for compliance reasons. We also want some good results in terms of protecting our organizations. So I want to give you the wheel here, Casey, and take it away with your next presentation. I'm going to stop my share here.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's so spot on, really, is, we're not just doing this for compliance. Even if you have to do it for compliance, hey, you might as well get some benefit out of doing the actual testing for your real security's sake. So a little bit about me and about Sprocket. I've been in the industry on the offensive side for 17 years now, as researcher, penetration tester, red teamer, software developer. And really, I wanted to bring the continuous aspect to organizations so they can reduce that time frame. And why can't we work like the real world attackers, right? As Chris was saying, know your enemy and how they actually work. How does offensive work? Well, they continuously test. And so I really wanted to help as many businesses as possible secure their infrastructure and not just do it, once a year. So 2018, Sprocket opened the doors. I created that attack surface management capability because, again, you need to have that targeting data in order to do the continuous testing, and started building and started learning. And I'll share all the different aspects that I've learned along the way with the solution and how it works, where the benefits are, because this is the future, as Chris was saying. So about Sprocket, we're based in the Midwest in the United States. All of our testers are from the United States. So if you're in government sectors and whatnot, we can support you there. And we hire the best of breeds where we need to use humans. And we also build out the tech that scales this testing to do it continuously. So the state of exploitation, Chris summed it up really good. I'll just put on, just a couple touch points here. CVEs have increased 38% from 2023, and I think we're already trending like 22% up this year from 2024. So totally the ability for us to identify vulnerabilities, we're getting better at actually disclosing them. AI is actually identifying vulnerabilities more frequently. Here at Sprocket, we're using AI as well. And I'll tell you what, it goes from a tester discovering on the average of 4 CVEs a month to 50 plus. So it is definitely enabling and allowing a human to do more work. And so we're going to continue to see more and more vulnerabilities be published. In the average time of that exploitation, I remember back in the day, it used to be, you know, okay, vulnerability comes out, 2-3 months later, you see maybe an exploit shared underground, and then it's used in the real world. Now it is minutes. And so you got to be prepared for that. So the average time frame is shrinking. And look, most companies are already doing penetration testing as well, and they're still getting breached, right? So the way that we're doing it is not working. So we need to bring in that continuous aspect to the actual offensive side of testing. So this is a great visual of what that continuous difference looks like. You have the point-in-time penetration test that everyone's done for a long time, and we like to call it at Sprocket legacy testing. And really, the attack surface changes. I think Chris was saying it was about 45 minutes for the attacker to scan the internet. For us, we have the attack surface already mapped out. It actually takes us about 2 to 5 seconds. It takes longer to build the query to actually search for that type of technology for us to go ahead and test for the vulnerability or actually test the exploitation. So let's remove the fact that we're hunting for where these technologies are that we're testing. Let's move straight into the actual testing, identification of the vulnerability, exploitation, and then the thing that you would want to know the most is like, okay, what is the impact to that? So as you can see, you're going to get like a bunch of vulnerabilities. You know, you're going to get that initial report. In the point-in-time pen test, you get that report. We still provide that within X amount of 60 days. We'll actually provide a full-fledged report of all the tool, all the automation, all the manual-driven testing methodologies, all the different techniques. And then we move in this continuous life cycle where a new vulnerability comes up. We're there to test it. We see a lot of regressions as well. And also, the threat actors, the techniques actually change as well. So you want to actually be there to invoke those new techniques. And it's not just about CVEs. It's not just about the vulnerabilities. Sometimes the techniques, they're long-lived and they yield more fruit for the attacker over time. So techniques are also very interesting. I'll give you an example of a technique, right, over a CVE. I can maybe send you a QR code in a phishing or a social engineering, and I can maybe create that QR code to actually be a text in your email, and it bypasses all the technical controls, and it could still work, and I could still get you to land on the page, right? That's a technique that attackers are using. You're going to want to have your continuous testing, not wait 11 months before you can actually test that technique. You want to do it as soon as that actual technique comes out. That's what continuous penetration testing is offering. So detecting attack surface changes is so important here. That was the very first thing I actually had to build in order to do continuous penetration testing. I have to know where all the different assets are as the tester. I need to know how they change. And as we adopt cloud and DevOps more and more aggressively, those perimeters, well, you have multiple perimeters, you have multiple edges, right? And those are coming and going and changing. And you need to follow that. You need to understand, did something accidentally get exposed? Is this just someone changed the copyright date on a website, or did they actually add a bunch of forms in a new attack surface, right? Because if so, it should be tested because the actual real world adversaries are testing it. So you need to have attack surface management. I call it a competency in order to do continuous penetration testing. And you know, an actual statistics right from SANS is a great one. 83% of attacks leverage misconfigured or exposed assets. So that shadow IT, anyone with a credit card can stand up these things and change it. So your actual proactive testing needs to account for that. And many times, what I've learned just looking at attack surfaces, I don't even need a test. I can basically say, I see a misconfiguration here. They probably don't want to be exposing their Elasticsearch with all their data, and especially this data, to the whole world. So it's extremely important to have that monitoring capability. And so let's talk about a little bit of the difference, because there's different ways you can go about doing a kind of an always on approach to this type of testing. You know, I've always called it continuous penetration testing. That is what it is. But, you know, point in time is the legacy stuff that's been out there. You know, PTAS is pen testing as a service is out there, bug bounty, and then fully automated solutions. And just this graphic here gives you a kind of a breakdown of the different ones. You know, every single one is going to use human-driven testers, that intuition that they have, except the automated aspect. And as you can see, there's gaps with these other ones. And we actually can bring a continuous penetration testing offering that checks all these boxes. And that's what I was building at Sprocket on day one, is like, look, you know, I always want it to be always on, always available for testing, not a credit system where, you know, feed your credits and tell it where to test. No, the attackers are going to know where to test based off of where vulnerabilities are, where misconfigurations are. So let's follow that. Let's follow the changes. Let's always be active, and let's be extremely transparent with every testing that we're doing, because that's a benefit to you, right? If we do a test, we fail, we expose that in our platform, which we do today. That gives you the capability to basically say, this technical control is working, or no, this technical control has a gap. And we even overlay that on the MITRE ATT&CK as well. So you can see where your gaps are. As Chris was saying, the MITRE ATT&CK framework is so important to actually kind of look at it organization holistically and say, where do I need to invest more time and resources in? Where are my gaps, right? So your testing should be able to do that. Your testing should also leverage automation for scale and repeatability, but not solely be the only thing, because you want to have, as Chris was saying, the agile capabilities into testing. You want to be able to test something right now, today. You don't want to send it through a software development lifecycle and wait, you know, 2 weeks. You need to move faster. And the testing depth goes deeper and deeper over time. So if we've already tested this page and it hasn't changed, we can move on and test other, but that context needs to be known. And we've built that in our attack surface management so we can basically deepen that testing, but not forget about the breadth as well. What is every single asset that's related to this organization that can actually be an attack surface that an attacker is going to target? So we know the business, you know, what are the benefits here? We're decreasing that exposure time, you know, less emergency patching. You know, we're going to be able to identify something within seconds and say, and report on it and know if it's something you need to take action on. You're going to spend less time managing pen tests, you know, and going through the procurement process and putting in credits. And you're just going to be more proactive in general. So kind of things to take away here is, you know, change-driven attack surface visibility is that competency that any continuous penetration testing offering needs to have. We've built it because it's so close and it's built right into the actual testing. Those are coupled together so tightly. But we also have a community edition available. So if you want to just sign up just for the ASM exposure aspects of our offering, you can do that. I believe everyone should be able to see their attack surface and work with it and get that hacker's perspective, because that's needed. And that continuous penetration testing bridges those gaps between the static assessments. It basically means less time you spend juggling scoping, meetings, procurement, all this, and just here's the actual what's fair game, what's in scope, just like the attackers, and you can go from there. And basically, we do this because we want to help protect our businesses and de-risk, and this is the way to do it, because this is how attackers are doing it. So I just want to leave you with that. I'll hand it back over to Chris or Carol and see if there's any questions that I can help answer.
Absolutely amazing, Casey. Thank you so much. Great presentation, great insights. There is a question. Do you have the question panel as well, Casey?
Oh, I do. Derek asks, how do costs compare to PTAS engagements? So that's a great question. And what we do at Sprocket is we look at the complete attack surface and we say, don't put any exclusions in there, because the attackers don't have any exclusions. And we basically say, what are the live hosts? and you price it based off of the live host. So that's going to be the pricing compared. Whereas a lot of PTAS engagements will have a credit system or our system behind it. For us, we just want to know what we're starting with and what potentially that growth is kind of built in.
And let me all remind the audience here, let me remind all the audience, sorry, that he's also on LinkedIn, I assume. Like, you can reach out, you can get in touch, and you can get your questions answered even after this webinar is over. That does mark the 30 minutes, though. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Carol, do you want to end it from here?
Yep, sounds good. All right, thank you so much, Chris and Casey, for your great presentation, and to Sprocket Security for sponsoring this webcast, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.